Good afternoon, good evening. In June 1986, when a few of us, then strangers, boarded the Coromandel Express from Chennai to Calcutta, we didn't realize that we were actually starting off on a journey, which is one heck of a journey and something that's been one filled with amazing friendships, great life lessons, some sobering moments, but most importantly, gave me a chance to be here today and addressing the Foundation Day on the 62nd Foundation Day as a speaker. So certainly honored and blessed, and thank you for having me here this evening. Chairman, Board of Governors, Sri Krishna Kulkarni, Director, Professor Uttam Kumar, Dean, Mr. Manish Thakur, Dean Bhaskar, distinguished alumni, friends, young students, family members, everybody, thank you very much for having me this evening. It is a pleasure. And to our 4 distinguished alumni, it is a big shout out. When I heard the citations, it was clear why you are here this evening. So heartiest congratulations and compliments to each of you. When I was thinking about what I should be saying this evening, many thoughts crossed my mind. Having been a banker for a greater part of more than 3 decades, the usual temptation is to talk about economy, digital trends, the various developments that are happening, and of course, in the current world, conversations around inflation, interest rates, challenges, recession, you name it. I did think about it, and I realized one of the awardees is from Google, so there's a good chance that everybody will Google and try and find out, and realize that you all know much more about all these developments. So I sort of banished that thought and said, let me try and talk about things that hopefully are born out of my personal experiences and what I have come to understand. And like all the previous speakers, this is family. Once you come to IIM Calcutta, whether as a young student or coming back as a distinguished alumni or as an opportunity that I have today, just entering the gates of IIM Calcutta is transformational, right? Irrespective of mosquitoes or otherwise, it's just the spirit of it just engulfs you. So, like I said, having banished that thought, I decided to use the time you've given me to share some of my thoughts and experiences on how our beloved institution influences our soul and what lessons it imparts to us, most important, by contemplating on what the external world expects of us as IIMCians. And also imagine the perpetual contribution the institute makes to the world beyond the campus. I must confess, while the audience is kind of mixed and the DAs and professors, I have targeted much of my conversation to our younger students. 2 years ago, this event, I'm told, was offline. Last year was hybrid. And today it's literally unmasked and in front of us. Thankfully, I don't see anybody with a mask. So this is just symbolic of the fact that we have come through very challenging times. And I think these, what seemed like insurmountable headwinds, have clearly been overcome. But the Russia-Ukraine war and the consequent general challenges that have prevailed suggest that headwinds come and go. Headwinds and tailwinds come and go. But I do believe there is an innate horsepower that is the strongest missile in our armory. So this evening, I intend talking to you about, this provided the slides work, talking to you about horsepower and not tailwinds that differentiate leaders and otherwise. So this is really about horsepower and tailwinds. So let me just take you to a story which I'm sure most of us are familiar in one form or the other. Around 18 years back in 2004, a young girl, all of 12 years old, went up to her cousin who was a hedge fund manager, young hedge fund manager, and had a great passion for teaching, and sobbed to her about her weakness in mathematics and talked about how she was struggling to get by. The teacher in this young man encouraged her to say, okay, I will teach you. And he used the then prevailing techniques like Yahoo Messenger and doodles and whatever have you, and was able to use all the technology of those times and was a good teacher, and she started liking mathematics. And the large family that they were, around 15 of the cousins, suddenly started getting distance tutored. To this young man, that was an aha moment. He figured that if I can do this to 15 members in my family, I can do it to the whole world. And so thus was born what today we know as Khan Academy, and that gentleman was Salman Khan, who is with one computer, one man, one dream, started touching 135 million lives. And as all of us know, you know what happened with Khan Academy. Some of you may have watched this incredible series called The Most Dangerous Ways to School. I think that was a painful reminder of the difficulties children face in just getting to school. So I think Khan pioneering taking the classroom to the learner, as well as to the families who could not afford to give their children even primary schooling, was something quite special. Interested in this, I started reading a little more about Khan Academy, and I came across a quote by a young Afghan girl, Sultana, and I quote, "Had I never come across it, my life would be like millions of other little Afghan girls stuck in the cage of ignorance. Thank you for helping me free the cage." I've talked about Khan Academy at length to make a case in point. Let me draw your attention to, I think that is something quite special. If all of you look at the screen there, Jnanam Sarvahitaya, this knowledge for the benefit of all, is the motto of the campus. I do hope all of us know that this is the motto of IIM Calcutta. To be honest, I didn't know till very early, right? So I think, let me just talk about, you recognize this, the motto, and so if Khan Academy was one fine example, I think the professors here are no less. They are another fine example of how they selflessly share their learnings to the betterment of all of us. So I think Jnanam, knowledge, being channels of knowledge demands that we stay alert to being students all our lives, as well as sharing both what it does to us, it sharpens and of course gives us immeasurable fulfillment. But it's not about Jnanam alone. I would urge you to look at the second word, Sarvahitaya, which is for the betterment of all. How can we ensure that all our knowledge and skills, all that we absorb, is being put to use for the betterment of the universe, is what I think the founders of this campus were bold visionaries who built this institution not merely to teach us to maximize the next quarter's profit or the share price increase or look at things like gaining market share, but to imbue us with expansive and inclusive values that truly can define what we can take to the world. So they were wise men and women who intuitively knew that the highest of Maslow's hierarchy, self-actualization, can only be met when such a spirit touches our everyday activities. If we are true to this lofty motto in our lives, I believe we would have been true ambassadors of this institute. So much for ethos. Let me talk to you about some action. I believe there's a Salman in all of us, lurking in all of us. We all sincerely think we have ideas that can change the world. Very often, we are restless about the environment and around us and want to make changes. I think it was Thomas Edison who said famously, "Vision without expectations is nothing but hallucination." To some of us who've been on the campus, at least in my time, there was a lingo that used to be there which actually described this hallucination. I don't have the word prevails yet, called halu. Right? I don't know if it prevails on the campus yet, but I cannot see some of my seniors nodding their heads, so probably the word died somewhere, but halu brilliantly described this experience of chilling out and not being accountable for the outcome. So more about it when we do the Q&A. Likewise, in our times, there used to be something called colloquia sessions. I don't know if they are yet there, where eminent people used to come and speak. And one such speaker in my time was Baron Swaraj Paul. And Baron Paul, after his speech, there was this after-speech dinner in the EDP Center, which is just next to the old hostel. And a few of us were invited to be at the dinner, and I don't know what process led to it. I was seated next to him. Being the young, enthusiastic, class participation type, I wanted to sort of soak content from him, and I was busy quizzing him on business models, on talking to him about strategy, and giving him probably what I thought was very, very clever wisdom. He stopped me on my tracks, and I do recall quite distinctly some of the words he mentioned. And let me quote some of those as I sort of cobbled those thoughts together. "Young man, An idea and its execution are two inseparable factors like cause and effect. But sadly, you MBA graduates allow your education to come in the way of your success. And he also added, focus on this presentation fever is a serious problem. Please start focusing on execution. And long after that, I put this thought from .ppt to .exe. And I think these words have remained with me till that, and as a leader, I still remind myself every day and my team very regularly that good business planning is fine, but it's 9 parts execution and just 1 part strategy. And I repeat, 90% of success is execution and 10% is strategy. These words, like I mentioned, have remained with me, and I think .ppt to .exe. It's ironical that I'm talking about EXE with a PPT presentation, but that's just the way to express. But the short point is just focus. And I did think one of our alum, I think it was Ananda, was mentioned that, sort of diligence. I think you mentioned about diligence, and I completely agree with that thought. I would encourage all of us to be obsessed with this, and if you will, this is your second takeaway from my speech. Moving on, another topic that's been very close to my heart, and which is, at many times, I've used that as choices, and I do ask all students, particularly at the Indian Institute of Management, can we contribute to the development of India in our careers? And I heard Chairman BOG speak about it. How can we contribute to India in our careers, right? And I think that's quite significant considering the horsepower that each of us possess and can bring to the world. We often hear that India is running the software of tomorrow on the hardware of yesterday. The closest and probably the coolest Indian equivalent of the word innovation is certainly Jugaad. We are a proud Jugaad nation. The principles of frugality and flexibility are ingrained in us from the very beginning. Like my friends in Karnataka say, Solpa adjust madi yaar, right? So I think we have that in our system. We're famous for using the laptop screens for shaving. We're famous for using iron boxes to make Maggie. We're famous for ensuring that cycles generate electricity, and there are many such hacks. But I think all this in the toughest of circumstances that one finds innovative solutions. Like as they famously say, necessity is the mother of invention. As you know, the country has adopted Atmanirbhar Bharat as our guiding principle. Our startups, like all of us have spoken, and I think Srikanth is at the cutting edge of it, our startups are leaving a strong impression on the world, and we have a huge startup ecosystem. As leaders who are going to shape the next 50 years, I feel I must use this opportunity to broaden your vision from Atmanirbhar Bharat to Bharat Pe Nirbhar. This is my we are a pharmacy of the world. We talk about being granary to the planet. We talk about software power for humanity. All these are epithets that I use to describe India today. We have the potential to develop many frugal innovations and make the planet Bharat Pe Nirbhar. If you build your horsepower and strengthen the core in your respective domains, you will certainly discover the bespoke and unique solutions to make Bharat Pe Nirbhar a reality. I have spoken to you about 3 themes. One is the whole idea of Jnanam Sarvamitya. I did speak to you about the idea of moving away from the PowerPoint fever to an execution, about creating Bharat Pe Nirbhar. I'd now talk to you about sustainability and building something that's lasting, and above all, being institution builders. Recently, I came across this wonderful Japanese terminology called daisugi. I don't know how many of you have seen it. Became curious about what daisugi is. I did the normal thing, Googled, Sanjay, thank you. And I figured that back in the 1500s, the physically small country that Japan is faced shortage of logs and land to cultivate trees, even it relied on timber for everything. The ingenious Japanese came up with a creative solution of growing additional trees out of existing trees, creating a sense of a giant bonsai. yielding a sustainable harvest of timber from every single tree. The idea is not to talk about forestry techniques and climate change, that's for another session, but I wanted to point out Daisugi as a beautiful idea that defines being mindful of what lies beyond our vision. And I think that's where I want to remind ourselves that the purpose of leadership is to build lasting organizations and for leaders to be institution builders. Thank you, Professor, you and Mr. Kulkarni. You did mention about Federal Bank's institution building. I do think longevity and building institutions trump everything, and everybody comes out of this campus should certainly consider the option of not being a fly-by-night, but building lasting organizations that lives long after us, and importantly, we, like I mentioned, coming out of the portals of IIM Calcutta, we are obliged to make sure that we are doing something for social good. So I think building institutions I would harp on as being crucial, and building the values that construct that are something that I'd want everybody to consider. Finally, a few words will say. You've already got your passport when you enter this campus. However, the visa is getting stamped when you leave campus. Choose your destinations wisely. Remember, we live life forward, but always understand it backwards. You'll probably recall that I started my session by talking about a train journey where some managers were on board with me. Some strangers were on board with me. Of course, they didn't stay strangers for long. Over 10 of them were batchies and have turned out to be my best friends. Some of them are there in this hall. But one of the strangers even transitioned from being a co-passenger to a fellow lifelong traveler. Yes, my wife Maya too was on the train, and I haven't left her on the journey ever since. If she is listening, I want to put a shout out to her. This is not to talk about my romance, but rather to share that some of the people who are around you here will be your best friends forever and add to your horsepower. And here I do want to play one of my favorite title tracks. I'll be there for you. 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 Yeah, I didn't realize it didn't stop. I do want to sort of play this title. I'm sure you recognize this from Friends, the popular sitcom. It's about lasting friendships and building stronger bonds. Use this line, live it, and watch the magic that unfolds. As leaders, when your team hears you say, "I'll be there for you," you know that your job is half done. It builds trust and togetherness and energizes us all to rally around the organization's goal. Go out and make sure that they indeed hear, "I'll be there for you," or in our good old Bollywood style, "Mehuna." Young leaders, get set, go set your direction, otherwise someone else will do it for you. Find your watershed moment and make bold forays into it. I didn't realize I had such an impact that. Find your watershed moment and make bold forays into it, building your horsepower, for as they say, one who waits gets the tailwind, but one who rows gets to the harbor. Your tailwinds may bump up your efforts, but your core should be ready to absorb the gear shift, and for that, you need to be ready to pack 400 horsepower and into a two-cylinder engine and yet not explode. So let me just sort of bring this to a close by saying, just recall the points I mentioned. Jnanam Sarvahataya, from .ppt to .exe, Daisugi, Atmanirbhar Bharat, and I'll be there for you. I don't know, the more perceptive of you will figure this out. This is what the JD Master Yoda said, right? Do or do not, there is no try. And just coincidence that these alphabets stitch up to that. And so prepare well for your visa to be stamped. As Yoda famously said, do or do not, there is no try. And finally, on Children's Day today, don't forget to celebrate your childhood, which is really a bank of memories. Always remember and remain the curious, wide-eyed kid. Thank you for being a wonderful audience. May the force be with you.